Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which allows warrantless wiretapping and tracking of Americans, all in the name of national security.
Is Obama being truthful with the American people and the world, by the way? Go ahead.
I mean, I think it's quite clear that they're not being truthful, and they're depending on the fact that they're trying to keep every single document secret. I mean, they want you to believe that they've done this, they've done that they're stopping this, they're stopping that, but then at every single turn, they want to keep the hands and the documents about these programs away from the American people, away from the press, away from any sort of oversight or scrutiny that could show whether or not they're telling the truth. And, I mean, if you're going to have that kind of behavior, if you're going to be so secretive and want to keep everything in the dark with the lights off, it's hard for me to believe anything they say. I think it's almost definite that they are, and we have revelations going back to 2006 with the Electronic Frontier Foundation of AT&T handing over information to the NSA and other authorities, and with the revelations released by Edward Snowden and his heroic acts, I think most certainly they're lying and being misleading about almost every aspect of this program.
An enormous overreach.
All of us are suspect now, aren't we? Everyone is suspect. It's amazing.
A new expose in Wired magazine has revealed new details about how the National Security Agency is quietly building the largest spy center in the country in Bluffdale, Utah, as part of a secret NSA surveillance program codenamed Stellar Wind. According to investigative reporter James Bamford, the NSA has established listening posts throughout the nation to collect and sift through billions of email messages and phone calls, whether they originate within the country or overseas. The Utah Spy Center will contain near bottomless databases to store all forms of communication collected by the agency. This includes the complete contents of private emails, cell phone calls, and Google searches, as well as all sorts of personal data trails, parking receipts, travel itineraries, bookstore purchases, and other digital pocket litter.
In addition, the NSA has also created a supercomputer of almost unimaginable speed to look for patterns and unscramble codes. James Bamford writes, this secret surveillance program is in some measure the realization of the total information awareness program created during the first term of the Bush administration, but later killed by Congress in 2003 due to privacy concerns and public outcry. James Bamford joins us now from London, England. His article in Wired is called "The NSA is Building the Country's Biggest Spy Center. Watch What You Say." Jim Bamford is an investigative journalist who's been covering the National Security Agency for the last 3 decades. He came close to standing trial after revealing the NSA's operations in an explosive 1982 book called The Puzzle Palace. His latest book is the last in his trilogy on the NSA. It's called The Shadow Factory, the ultra-secret NSA from 9/11 to the eavesdropping on America.
An archive, a massive complex so large that it necessitated expanding the town's boundaries. Once built, it will be more than 5 times the size of the U.S. Capitol. Rather than Bibles, prophets, and worshipers, this temple will be filled with servers, computer intelligence experts, and armed guards. And instead of listening for words flowing down from heaven, these newcomers will be secretly capturing, storing, and analyzing vast quantities of words and images hurling through the world's telecommunications networks. In the little town of Bluffdale.
So, James Bamford, it's good to have you on, albeit from Britain right now. But talk further about what you have found and what the capacity of this data center, as they call it, seemingly so innocuous, is.
Well, it's going to be 1 million square feet. That's gigantic. There's only one data center in the country that's larger, and it's only slightly larger than that. And it's going to cost $2 billion. It's being built in this area on a military base outside of Salt Lake City in Bluffdale. As I said, they had to actually extend the boundary of the town so it would fit into it. And the whole purpose of this is the centerpiece of this massive eavesdropping complex, this network that was created after 9/11. During the 90s, the NSA had a disastrous decade following the Cold War. They missed the first World Trade Center bombing. They missed the attack on the USS Cole. They missed the attack on the U.S. embassies in East Africa. And finally, they missed the 9/11 attacks. So NSA wanted to pretty much recreate itself as this massive eavesdropping organization that was, during the Cold War, focused on the Soviet Union primarily, and to some degree the Eastern Europe and China and Cuba, communist countries. And today it's focused on anybody that could use a piece of communication, because the terrorists that they're eventually after use the same kind of communications that everybody else does. So it has to focus on the worldwide network of communications, the same network that all of us use. So you have this massive agency that's collecting a tremendous amount of information every day by satellites, by tapping into undersea cables, by picking up microwave links and tapping into cell phones and data links and your computer email links and so forth. And then it has to store it someplace, and that's why they built Bluffdale. And then that acts as, in essence, like a cloud, a digital cloud, so that agency employees, analysts from around the country at NSA headquarters and their listing posts in different parts of the U.S. in Georgia, Texas, Hawaii, and Colorado can all access that information held in Bluffdale in that data center. And that's pretty much a summary of what that data center is all about.
General article in Wired magazine reported this month that a whistleblower formerly employed by the NSA has stated NSA signals intercepts include, quote, eavesdropping on domestic phone calls and inspection of domestic emails, end quote. Is that true?
No, not in that context. The question that, or I think what he's trying to raise is, are we gathering all the information on the United States? No, that is not correct.
That was NSA Director General Keith Alexander being questioned by Georgia Congressman Hank Johnson. James Bamford, your response.
Well, you know, the NSA has constantly denied that they're doing things, and then it turns out they are doing these things. They denied they were doing domestic eavesdropping back in the 70s, and it turned out they had Operation Shamrock and Operation Minaret, and they've been reading every single telegram coming in or going out of the country for 30 years at that point, and also eavesdropping on anti-war veterans. That came out during the Church Committee report. More recently, a few years ago, President Bush said before camera that the United States is not eavesdropping on anybody without a warrant. And then it turns out we had this exposure to all the warrantless eavesdropping, the New York Times article. And so you have this constant denial and parsing of words in terms of what he's saying.
Collection, analysis, and reporting on military and geopolitical issues all around the world, every country in the world. So it was a rather large technical problem to tackle, but and one of the largest problems we thought we had was looking at the World Wide Web and all the ballooning and mushrooming communications in the world. And our ability to deal with that was diminishing over time, so I kind of referred to it as our inability to keep up with the rate of change. So we were falling behind the rate of change. I had a very small group of people in a lab, and we decided to attack that problem. We did it by looking at how we could graph the network of communications and all the communications in the world, and then focus in on that graph and use the graph to limit what we wanted to attack. And we basically succeeded at that, but in the process, of course, we scooped up Americans from different places, so we had to protect their identities according to our laws and privacy rights of U.S. citizens. So under UCIT 18, we built in protections to anonymize their identities, so you couldn't really tell who you were looking at.
And that's because the NSA could do surveillance from abroad, but not of U.S. citizens.
Well, and you see, the World Wide Web routes things all over, so you never really know where U.S. citizens' communications are going to be routed. So if you were collecting somewhere else on another continent, you could still get U.S. citizens. That was a universal problem. So we devised how to do that and protect U.S. citizens. And this is all before 9/11. And we devised how to do that, made that effective and operating. So we were actually prepared to deploy about 8 months before 9/11 and actually have a system that would run and manage the what I call 20 terabytes a minute of activity. So, but after 9/11, all the wraps came off for NSA, and they decided to, between the White House and NSA and CIA, they decided to eliminate the protection of the U.S. citizens and collect on domestically. So they started collecting from a commercial, the one commercial company that I know of that participated, provided over 300, well, probably on the average about 320 million records of communications of a U.S. citizen to a U.S. citizen inside this country.
What company?
AT&T. It was long-distance communications. So they were providing billing data. At that point, I knew I could not stay because of a direct violation of the constitutional rights of everybody in the country. Plus, it violated the Pen Register Law and Stored Communications Act, the Electronic Privacy Act, the Intelligence Acts of 1947 and 1978. I mean, it was just a whole series of, plus all the laws covering federal communications governing telecoms. I mean, all those laws are being violated, including the Constitution, and it was a decision made that wasn't going to be reversed, so I could not stay there. I had to leave.
What I would like to do, quote from a number of people in the article that are whistleblowers. They worked at NSA. They worked there many years. One of my key whistleblowers was the senior technical person on the largest eavesdropping operation in NSA. He was a very senior NSA official. He was in charge of basically automating the entire world eavesdropping network for NSA. So, and one of the other people is a intercept operator that was actually listening to these calls, listening to journalists calling from overseas and talking to their wives and having intimate conversations. And she tells about how these people were having these conversations, and she felt very guilty listening to them. These people came forward and said, you know, this shouldn't be happening. Bill Binney, the senior official I interviewed, had been with NSA for 40 years almost, and he left saying that what they're doing is unconstitutional. What I'd like to see is, why don't we have a panel for the first time in history of some of these people and have them before Congress, sitting there telling their story to Congress instead of to me, and then have NSA respond to them. I mean, this is the American public who we're talking about, whose phone calls we're talking about, so and email and data searches and all that. So I think it's about time that the Congress get involved instead of asking questions from a newspaper or from a magazine article, and start actually questioning these people on the record in terms of what they're doing and how they're doing it and to whom they're doing it, you know, to whom they're doing it.
Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which allows warrantless wiretapping and tracking of Americans, all in the name of national security.